Hi there, people on YouTube. A couple of weeks ago, I made a video about this guitar to enter Tamed's DIY Kit Challenge for 2022. Now, on their website it stated that it had to be under 60 seconds, so I stick to that, but then you really can't share that much about the process or show many different sounds. So I thought I'd make a slightly longer video as well to just let you know what I went through on my very first kit build, because this was the first time I actually did a complete kit build. To start with, I had an SG kit which I got for my birthday, and when I opened the box I noticed that, wow, with just a couple of screwdrivers you could basically put this together and you have a functioning guitar, probably. I did want to do a little bit more than just assemble it, so the least I could do was get it a pretty decent paint job, or that's what I tried to do anyway, and I really wanted to make the shape more unique. Well, when you have an SG, there's really not that much to take away, so I was going for the least amount of body you need to have a guitar that still sits comfortably in your lap, because obviously I could have just taken the center strip and moved the electronics over here and that would be a minimalistic guitar, but I'm sitting down a lot, so I did want to keep that ridge. And then I found out, yeah, you kind of need some wood here to lean against your body as well, and the lower half of the body is really hard to change because obviously the cavity is here, so if you take a little bit off then you're halfway through the cavity, so I just kept the bottom part the same and just decided to go for taking away the horns basically. That's why I called this the Tamed Devil, because obviously the horns are a signature of the SG. I kind of like what I ended up with, sort of like a semi-offset design. Maybe it could be a little smoother, but for my first time I'm pretty happy with it. What I ended up doing is just grabbing a multi-tool basically with a saw blade and just roughly cutting the horns off first. Obviously I had a little bit more room to take off than here, because otherwise it wouldn't sit nicely on my lap anymore. And then smooth it out, grind it a little bit, and round off the new edges that I made. And actually during painting I looked at it, and in the light with the reflections on the paint, I smoothed out the edges a little bit more, because it didn't look that well. I might even go in for a third time, because especially here on the upper part it's kind of wide up here, which is kind of funky because it's getting smaller when you go down here. But I guess I'll leave it at that because it's my first time. So that's what I did. I took off these parts, and then I ran into the first problem, which was, especially up here, it's down here a little bit as well, but especially up here there were some cavities in the wood which I had to fill up. And I just went to my hardware store and got some regular standard wood filler, but it had a pretty different color to the wood that's underneath here. And because I used semi-translucent paint, you can actually, when you get really up close, you can still see it up here. Anyway, that meant filling it, sanding it again, sanding it again. I used a lot of paper for it. Did a lot of it by hand as well, because I was always told that heavy tools will make big mistakes really quickly, and I guess there's something to that, so I stuck to that. Now, then came the paint job. I did decide to order some specific guitar lacquer online and not just go to my hardware store and get like the regular lacquers you can find out there. Did that once before and it didn't work out that well on a guitar I already had. And I made like a sort of paint booth in my yard. Um, and had to wait a couple of weeks before the weather got nice enough, and there was no rain or too much moisture in the air, to get the paint job done. Well, I did try to do that, well, kind of decently. So I did use some sanding sealer, then the color coat, and then a satin top coat. And what I wanted to do is I could have just left the neck and the headstock the way they were and just screw it on. But I thought, you know what, I'm gonna tape it off and see if I can get the front of the headstock matched with the body. It kind of worked. I used the exact same amount of layers here as I used here, but because the wood's a little bit different, this one's still a little bit lighter. And for some reason, I guess because it was outside, it got bubbly on some of the edges, unfortunately. The taping off of the edges worked out pretty well. There's a couple of little spots where it seeped over just a little bit, but other than that, it was fine. And then I just had to wait for it to properly dry and harden out. And I could finally assemble the guitar, which, as I told you, it seemed fairly straightforward. But I ended up doing a couple of different things than just screwing it together and connecting the wires, which is really easy because you've got these connectors. So actually, you wouldn't need to do some soldering if you're not experienced with it. The only thing is then there's going to be so much wire, I'm pointing at this, but it's over there, in your cavity that I decided to cut some out anyway and just solder it directly to the pots and to the switch instead of trying to get the connectors back in between. So that's what I did to clean that up just a little bit. Bridge was fine, tailpiece was fine, but then I got to string the guitar and I had some trouble with the nut. And for people who've seen the previous video and are really into details, they might have noticed that now I've got a black nut on it where it was like an off-white first. And that's due to that I had so much string buzz going on at the D string first fret. And it just seemed like already visually you could tell that the D string was sitting lower in the nut slot, so maybe they filed off just a tad too much in the factory. I don't know, but when I swapped it out for a nut that was actually in another really cheap guitar I got online, it worked out a little bit better. So that's the final thing I did. I put in the regular tuners which do the job they have to do. Had to do some adjusting. I still filed down the frets just a little bit up here to get rid of most of the buzz. And now it's actually a playable guitar. So all in all, what I should have done differently probably is work a little bit more cleanly, because I got some dents in the wood which seems to be really, really soft. Without knowing where they came from. Maybe have a little better padding on my workspace. Oh yeah, I forgot about the strap buttons. I put this one here right now, but actually the original hole that's pre-drilled is in the back of the neck. But as you can see, I made quite a mess because this was the original hole. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe we should do a close-up. I tried to put the screw in there, but it just wouldn't go further than a certain point. My theory is that that's where the first rod is, so maybe that's a design flaw, kind people at Tamed. But I actually decided to try again, just a little bit higher. I thought maybe there's just like a really hard spot in the wood or something. That wasn't a good idea because the screw actually broke off just about a couple of millimeters above the wood, actually. That's where the weak spot was apparently. So I had to get rid of that screw and I couldn't think of a way to get it out really. So what I did was I filed it down as much as I could, and then I used like an iron saw to get the rest off. Left me with some scratches right here, so that kind of sucks. But it's on the back side, so who's gonna see? And actually when I'm playing down here now, I smoothed it out enough that I'm really not feeling it. And to be honest, I'm never really in contact with that point when I'm up here, and I'm not up there that much. So that was the final part where I would say I should have done things differently. For now I consider this finished, so I'm just gonna play around with it, see if I'm actually into playing this thing. Must say the pickups sound kind of nice, so maybe I will keep them, maybe I'll swap them out, maybe I'll go for even another nut because this is a plastic one as well. I could try a Tusk one or something like that. Could try some new tuners, maybe even some new pots and what have you. But this for now is my final product, which I'm playing on a pretty regular basis, even though I've got better guitars probably lying around. Well, that was the story. I hope I didn't bore you too much. I just quickly want to share with you some sounds this thing can make. In the last video I just did some riff in a little bit of overdrive. So let's just start out with a clean sound right now to give you an idea of what these pickups do. And what I said is kind of cool. Sounds coming out of here, my Black Star, and this is it, really. This is just a regular G chord. So that sounds kind of cool. When we go to the middle position, it's a little more rounded, but still usable, maybe for a little bit of funky stuff or something. And the neck on this thing, well, there it gets pretty dark pretty quickly. Makes me even want to play in A minor, so oh my god. If you go to the G, it's kind of dullish, but you know, a humbucker in the neck position to me always is. So you might just go for some as you can hear, it's pretty clean. Well, that's what it should be, right? And with a little bit of overdrive, it kind of sounds like this. This is back on the bridge position as well, right? Because who wants to do that on the neck position? That's just... Well, actually, it's not that bad. So, all in all, those are the sounds you can get from a pretty cheap kit. This was around €100, I believe. Got it as a gift, so I'm not certain of the actual price at the time. And just about €50 of lacquer and just some tools I had lying around, really. So I hope you liked that story and a little bit more background on how I came to build this Tamed Devil SG. And who knows, maybe I'll try doing it again next year and see if I can get a little more clean result. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.